Welcome to another episode of the Fireproof Career Podcast. I am your host, Subira Jones, aka the Corporate Hippie, and this is the podcast for the entrepreneur, the corporate professional who wants to achieve sustainable success without sacrificing their health along the way. Now, today I have a very special guest. We have Rebecca Keenan, who is the head of intelligent automation at the Expleo Group. She is a multi-award winning professional in the IT, the intellectual automation space. I met her at the head office at LinkedIn, where she was a keynote speaker for the intellectual automation women's group in that space. I personally know nothing about intellectual automation. I know nothing about artificial intelligence, but I loved hearing Rebecca's journey, her story, and just the incredible things she's doing in that space. And I thought more people need to hear what she does, know about the world of intellectual automation, and ultimately get to experience Rebecca. So without further ado, here is Rebecca Keenan.
Hello, Subira. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for being here. I really wanted to invite you on because, we met at the LinkedIn head office where you were given a keynote on the world of intellectual automation. I am ignorant to the world, but absolutely loved hearing your own journey. So before we begin, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit without saying what you do, but who you are and potentially a fun fact.
Interesting when you say to introduce yourself. It's you usually go the professional route, and there's that mix of personal there. But Rebecca Keenan, global head of intelligent automation, which I think we'll touch on a little later. But I get to lead a very talented team, doing a wide array of all sorts of interesting technologies, automation, generative AI, machine learning, chatbots, process mining, all that fun stuff. I'm also a big sister and a friend and a gal just trying to make her way through this chaotic world that we're living in. I don't know. I always get asked these fun facts, and the ones I've been using for the last while has been about my dog having more Instagram followers than I have. It's probably a little cuter than I am, but I still beat him on LinkedIn, so that's okay. But I guess maybe a more up to date fun fact. Well, I don't know if it's fun, but it's definitely a fact. I got my first tattoo last year, so
Oh,
after
nice.
spending 30 years saying I'd never get one, we can all change. I now have two, so a fact, maybe not fun, but fun for me.
Welcome to the club. I absolutely love tattoos and have a few myself that people probably don't know about. But yeah, hi. Hi,
Yeah.
Rebecca. So you've got an incredible career in the world of intellectual automation. I think actually even your story of how you became head of intellectual automation at Expleo is incredible. So could you please tell us how you became the head of intellectual automation at the Expleo Group?
It's an interesting question, and it's funny because I get asked about it so much, and then I trip over it sometimes. So I'm like, how did we get to where we are now? And it should always be like the easiest thing to talk about, like yourself. But sometimes I find, I can talk about automation and AI and how to deploy solutions, and I'm so confident, and like I fully believe like my team is the best team to be doing all of this. And then you switch personal, and it's a little more like, oh, how did we get there? But um, I guess if we go from the beginning, which is usually
Please
a
do.
good spot to start. I graduated college and entered the grad program in my company. So really, I was bottom of the barrel, starting from scratch. Entered it as a business analyst. So I was a BA starting out, and was trying to find my footing in this new kind of world of work. I didn't know how I was going to become successful, but I was fully convinced I was going to be successful. Um, I don't know where the confidence came from. My parents, my family, God knows, but I was gung ho going to be successful. And kind of 6 months in, I learned about RPA, robotic process automation, which is kind of the first technology that we started working on my team. And it was kind of a happy accident. I didn't seek it out. It kind of found me, which was thankfully it did. And, we started learning about it. Or I guess I, at the time, I don't know if it was a we, but we started to figure out, how could we sell it? I really quickly learned that there was a gap in the Expleo offering that we didn't have. And I was able to take that and really run with it. So even though I was super junior, I wasn't even out of the grad program yet. And all of a sudden I was running a team. I was putting myself in the table or at the table as a grad. I look back now and I probably owe people a couple of apologies for the attitude and the staff that I entered the room with. But, I was fully convinced that this was something that the company needed to do. And, within 3-4 months of that first introduction to RPA, we got our first client. Then we got our second client within the week. So I had no clients and then 2 clients all of a sudden. And we were trying to deliver, and I was managing a team for the first time. And, it was just bonkers when I look back at it, but we've grown since then. So, we started the team in Dublin. We then moved into the UK. We had an offshore offering in India, and I now run a global team with teams operating right across the group, working on more technologies than just RPA. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, chatbots, everything that kind of rolls into this new space. Delivering solutions and giving value back to our clients. So I probably skipped a few steps in between there, but it's been an interesting journey, going from kind of a graduate straight out of college to 7 years later, a global head of $1 billion company.
I love that. Such a meteoric ride. But what I love about your story is just the tenacity, the sheer tenacity, because I'm a huge believer that to make the impossible attainable, you need to have a level and a healthy level of delusion and arrogance.
Or confidence. People call it different things. Yeah.
In my world, I'm like, it's be a little bit delusional and a little arrogant to believe that what people can't see can be a possibility to get everyone on board.
Yeah.
And I guess
I think that's important too, because I think sometimes people try to weaponize that word, particularly with women, that confidence, and call it arrogance. It's not my business what you say about me. That's something I learned. Well, RuPaul probably taught me that one first. But I know in my younger career, like I used to get feedback, and like the only negative, or it would be in the negative column, would be like, she's very confident. And I'm like, that is not a negative. Do you know what I mean? And thankfully, I didn't let some of those comments get to me. But now, when I'm working with other people and other women coming up through the ranks, I'm like, never let someone try to dull your shine to get where you want to go. And I like a healthy delusion. I use that terminology a lot as well. But we move.
Before we talk about women in the space of the intellectual automation world, let's make sure everyone understands, because I know I didn't until I heard you speak. Could you just give us sort of a brief overview on what intellectual automation looks like, what it comprises of? I know you mentioned a few different products that fall underneath the umbrella, but what does that look like, and where does that sit within an organization's function?
Yeah, it's a big topic, but like is essentially intelligent automation, really highly put, is how can organizations and companies use technology to make themselves more efficient? So, essentially we're driving a lot of transformation programs within organizations. So that can look different for different people and different teams. I often say, what makes a program intelligent is just the fact that the technology works for the company, whether that be the fanciest new ChatGPT or just, using Microsoft efficiently, and everything in between. But really, the world I'm focused in is about automating tasks that are kind of repetitive, manual. If I look at RPA, that's the baseline anchor technology we use a lot, and it's, repetitive tasks that are kind of boring for maybe humans to do, and tasks that maybe humans are making or could make mistakes on, we can automate them now. We can give hours back to people. If I go down the routes of maybe AI, we're doing a lot of work with advanced analytics and actually learning from all of this data that's coming. We have chatbots who are actually interacting with end users, and now the trick is to get all of those different techs to work together. But really simply put, we work in the field of transformation and making processes more efficient.
It's really interesting you say that, because when people talk about artificial intelligence or intellectual automation, there seems to be a fear around whether they're going to completely replace humans and make us obsolete. But what I'm hearing from you is that actually potentially it can make us more efficient and potentially help with that sense of overwhelm and overload that contributes to burnout. So what does that look like in the space currently, given that it's such a new and developing market? Should people be concerned that they're going to become obsolete, or actually is it something they should really embrace and lean into?
Yeah, no, and it's an interesting question, and it's one that we try to take quite responsibly because people's fears are definitely valid, and the way I look at it is, you definitely have to take a responsible route towards what you're automating, how you're automating, but if you're working, if you're an employee today, the toothpaste is out of the tube already, but we're not putting it back in. AI is coming, it's here in a lot of cases, so I think we all definitely have a responsibility to embrace it. I think the days of trying to fight it are definitely gone. And it's really about now, how can we harness this technology to help in what we do? And it's an interesting topic. I was at a panel discussion on how AI is going to change. This was specifically project manager's job moving forward. And I kept getting a similar question. And I think a lot of times when we talk about, automation or AI taking work away from people, that question of, okay, well, what are we going to do? And, what's that gap being filled? And I'm like, well, maybe the 4-day week becomes an actual thing that we can do because we've given all this work away. And sometimes it's just that small reframing that we need to look at. So, I think definitely as individuals, we have to embrace it, figure out what it means for you. I think if I look at the bigger picture and this bigger conversation about AI and generative AI and what it's going to do, I err on the side of we need to be cautious. I probably err on the side of we need to maybe slow down a little. This is big, powerful tech that has, the ability to change a lot of things. So I think we definitely need to be, and I am optimistic about what it can do for us. But at the same time, I think, taking a breath would do no one any harm, given the ramifications that this tech may have moving down the line.
See, when you say ramifications, the thing that comes to my head is iRobot. Do you remember that film, Will Smith?
The Will Smith one, yeah.
Yeah, that's what comes to my mind. So whenever I use my Google Home or ChatGPT, I say please and thank you because I just want the robot to remember in their uprising
that you were
I
nice.
was polite. Yeah, I was polite. So I always say my
Yeah.
please and thank you. But
Yeah.
on a more serious note, I attended another event actually on LinkedIn the same week we met, a couple of days before, and it was about the use of AI in recruitment. And although it's a slightly different field in the same world, and the keynote speaker, Dr. Thomas, was saying that AI can increase and overtake humans in IQ, but they won't be able to do so in EQ, which I think is really important, especially in a post-pandemic world where people re-establish, relearning and yearning for human to human connection, to not be fearful and actually, as you said, the toothpaste is out the tube, embrace the direction that the world is
Mhm.
heading. And I think also when we think about, and correct me if I'm wrong, intellectual automation and that space, we tend not to see a lot of women in terms of representation.
Yeah, we're a little outnumbered. Yeah.
Such a shame, which is
Mm.
such a shame. So I'd love to know, it's a twofold question. The first part being, we know success is generally not linear. So it'd be great to understand what your experience has been like in the IA world, in the intellectual automation world as a woman and progressing so quickly and how you've been able to utilize that, harness that for the success that you have today.
Yeah, I guess it's true, and we ebb and we flow, and you can't always be on. You are hopefully never always off at the same time, and I think it's a culmination of things. If I, really step back and look at my career and what I've been able to do in the time frames that I've been able to do it, we probably need to step back a little as to, how I was raised and my education and some of the things I went through prior to hitting the workforce. I think it probably, needs to be discussed if we're looking at maybe even the resilience of, moving through the corporate ranks as I did. And something that I always go back to, and I actually never spoke about it publicly, not for any reason other than no one ever asked me until last year for the first time. But I failed my first year of college. And I didn't know what I was doing. If I'm completely honest, looking at it now, I was trying to become an adult when I was very much a kid at 18 years old, moving into college. Computer science is hard. I was doing a joint computer science and business degree. I was never good at taking exams. So that was always going to be a challenge. And I think failing that first year, repeating, finally getting through to the second year, third, fourth, I actually ended up finishing top of my class, and no one saw it coming, least of all myself. But what it taught me was there's this thing that I'm finding kind of difficult, and it has the ability to potentially stop me in my tracks for this life I want to live. But no, okay, I need to be resilient here, I need to be defiant, I need to take it on, but just work differently. And that was the first time. I didn't know this at the time. It's only kind of on reflection, but it was the first time I really had to look at a problem and say, okay, what I was doing isn't working here. How are we going to switch things up? Me and my best friend at the time, still one of my closest friends, we decided we were going to take the same classes, and we split up readings and note taking, and we got a bit more clever with our schedule, and we stopped going out as much, which, didn't kill us. Sometimes you just need to stop going out as much. And yeah, it was great. And I ended up, working differently, working smarter, maybe not harder.
Yeah.
And I came out top of my class. And I think that experience filtered into then everything I did when I was looking at my career, because a lot of times I would get comments on my early careers, and it was like, oh my God, like that was ballsy, or like, how did you do that? Or like, that was brave. And maybe it was a little bit of ignorance. I didn't know any better because I didn't have that years of experience, but I just always looked at a problem and said, we can fix it. No stress. Why are we all, I have a sister who's a doctor, and if, she messes up, someone could die, but like, no one's going to die in what I'm doing, that kind of way. So it's like, take a breath. And I think that experience really shifted and altered and affected how I moved through my career then, because when I came across a challenge, or there was it's twofold. There was challenges with the service, growing a service from idea to global service, that's hard.
Yeah.
I was a young woman in a field and at a table where, I was outranked by predominantly men. That came with challenges. And again, it was that idea of, perseverance and discipline, I think, maybe as well, the discipline to say this is hard and this sucks, and go and, take your moment and, cry in the shower, and then buck up and get out there and, have the discipline to go and do it, is how I've, faced every challenge in my career so far. But looking back, I think it stemmed from that idea when I was a kid as to, okay, I failed this first year, what am I going to do now? And unconsciously making that decision at the time, I think has really, brought me through my career as it has been.
I'm glad to hear it. And you mentioned about your family and your upbringing, and I wanted to know that level of grit and determination. Do you think that's something that's always innate in you, or something that was helped, shaped, and fostered by just your upbringing in general, or a little bit of both, nature, nurture?
Yeah, the age-old question. And I always say it's nature, nurture, and a bit of luck is what I say. But yeah, I was extremely lucky. I grew up with great parents who, we were lucky enough we got to travel and see the world. And, education was always really important in our house. And it was always, you got to try your best. And that really put a determination in all of myself and my siblings, to work hard. And I'm the oldest of 5 kids, the oldest daughter. If I ever go to therapy, they'll probably tell me that's the root of most of my issues. But we grew up in a spot where we were continually told by our parents that there was nothing we couldn't do. Maybe that's where some of that delusion comes from. But, even my dad would say, I could do even more than he could do, because, I could have a child as a woman and he couldn't do that. So like, I could really do everything. So, that's the belief that we grew up with. And I guess I was lucky then to be introduced to that world of IT and computer science so early. Our first ever pet, or my dad worked in IT, so that helped. And then our first ever pet was like a computer program, which, at the time got us a bit interested in IT. And, I look back now and I know it's because my mother didn't want an alive pet in the chaos of 5 kids as well. But, that got us into it. And, I think what my parents did for myself and my siblings, they taught us that empathy and kindness, they're traits that we should be leading with in everything that we do. And that the importance of how you treat people, that's always been key in our house. Of, how you treat people matters. You should treat them with kindness, lead with empathy, and, never expect anything in return as to what you're putting out into the world. So, that too was so major in our upbringing. And, saying that none of us are perfect, but I do try my best to, remember how I was raised and bring that forward into the world.
I think that's so important and so special to say because, as I mentioned before, AI could overtake us in IQ, but actually we have the advantage as humans for that emotional intelligence, which is paramount in the world that we live
Mm,
in. So I'm a huge believer that actually without empathy, you can't achieve sustainable success, whether that's on an individual or a systemic level. And
yeah.
it's really, really important to be free of burnout so you can have greater capacity to be empathetic. Oh,
Yes.
there.
Yeah,
And
sorry,
there's
I don't know if I even answered the question there.
no, you did, and I'm really grateful. I'm loving where it's going because it's definitely given me a lot of thought, a lot of parallels in terms of my own upbringing, having the opportunity to travel, see different cultures, meet different people, and how much that has shaped my own outlook of the world, my own determination. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know till you
Mm,
don't know, right? So if you've
yeah.
only ever seen the four walls around you, you haven't had exposure to different industries, different interests, different cultures, you're never going to realize that there's more beyond what you see directly in front of you. So that tenacity sometimes can't be nurtured if you don't go anywhere. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about the different parallels for sure. And my setback was, I don't know if it was a setback in the end, but my thing was first year of A levels. I think that's when I had my first burnout, to be honest with you,
Mm,
or when it first exhibited itself because I didn't do any coursework, I didn't do any revision, just showed up at my exam and thankfully didn't do terribly bad. I got 3 Bs with no coursework, no revision, just turned up with a pen on the day. I think I had a pen because that was
yeah.
my first time experiencing burnout.
Yeah.
But it
You probably
didn't
didn't even know what it was at the time. It's more
at
that
all.
reflection. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that I have the insight and the information, because oftentimes what I find is with burnout, because we don't have the same key performance indicators, KPIs in our personal life, it takes something in a more academic, structured, or professional setting for it to be able to be manifested because
Mm,
then the KPIs exist there in engagement, performance, attendance. So, on reflection, that's probably when I had my first burnout. But I think having siblings, having parents who really strived to go above and beyond for not only themselves but for us, enabling me to
mm.
realize actually I'm not going to take no as an answer. I can keep going. I'm not going to give up. I don't think it was in my DNA, but I also don't think they would have allowed me to,
Yeah, I always
to
say that.
just
I'm
give
like, how much was my free will versus my parents in the background? But I think it's one of those things you get older and you realize, you know what, my mom, she did know better.
absolutely. I'm so incredibly grateful for everything I hated as a teenager. It all makes sense now. It all
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, that's lucky too that, I have my parents. I still have my parents today and,
Yeah,
I still call my dad up and, run through a problem with him or, get advice from my mom and my siblings too. And, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that way.
absolutely. It definitely is a fortunate thing to have. So for me, my mum passed away not too, 7 years ago, maybe now, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's
But
hard.
I'm so grateful for the experience I had within that because it taught me so much. And I wouldn't be where I am now doing the work I do now if not for her. But also
Mhm.
everything she instilled in me. But then I am incredibly fortunate that I have a dad who is incredibly supportive and enabled me to take the time I needed to regain my health when I was really ill and then figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life. And
Yeah,
I feel like
big
I understand
questions.
it
Big questions.
all these existential questions that had to be asked, nature, nurture, why am I here? And I'm really grateful that I've got to a point where it's now making sense. I understand why I do what I do, the reason why I do it, which helps propel me forward on the days where I don't feel like I want to do anything at all, right?
Yeah, I think that word too, being grateful, and it comes with age, well, I still don't think I'm that old. I'm 31, going on 32. I've aged out of the 30 under 30 list, but that's okay. But um, when I look back and this is actually something I've never talked about publicly anyway. When I was 18, so even before going into college, I lost one of my friends. So we lost him too soon, and he was the best of us. He was just such a light, and like he was the one who was going to go and change the world. And well, he changed the lives of us who got to know him. But he had this ability to make you feel like you were the most important person in the world when you were speaking to him, and that's what I always remember about him. But I we lost him far too young, but what stays with me along with remembering him is the fact that I'm so grateful for this life that I get to live, and I've got to live. And I took up running last year. Well, I've taken up running many times over my life, but I stuck with it last year, so I've been consistent now. So I took up running last year, and um every day I go running, I pass a bench in my local park that's dedicated to him. And
I love
every
that.
time I go past it, I give it a nod, and I think of him, and I think of life. And something that I've kind of gotten the habit of doing is, we all get in our own way sometimes, and we
Mhm.
overegg things. And, we can all have a tendency, or I do anyway, to be a bit of a drama queen here and there. And, I sit on his bench, and I think of him and life, and I go, do you know what? It could be a lot worse. And I bring it back to that gratefulness of, you know, we're moving, we're shaking, we're here for another day. Let's do it.
It's so important. I think it
Mm.
highlights the difference between existing and living as well. So
Mm.
myself personally, I know I was existing for so many years because I wasn't deliberately living
Yeah.
life. I wasn't intentionally making decisions about what I wanted to do both personally and professionally. And it wasn't until I lost my mum and then I lost my health entirely with multiple sclerosis, so I couldn't control my own body, where I went, actually, there has to be more to life.
Yeah,
There
and
has
it's
to be.
hard too because that you are forced into that. And I think it's so often, we're too busy. It's busy, busy, busy. I hate using that as an excuse myself, but it's just like it can be hard to step out of that. And you're an example too. Like these things, life came at you, and forced to
Literally.
change. But it's how can we then? And that's why I love some of the work that you do, because it's like, well, how can we be more proactive on controlling what we can control? No, I mean, I think I've said this to you before, but, when I heard your story, I was like, "Oh, goddamn, that girl." She you know you should be proud.
And I am, and I'm really grateful that you said that, because sometimes you just take things for granted. But as you said, when life comes at you, you really have a decision to make. And mine
Mm,
was, well, like, stop existing, start living, start intentionally being proactive and going after the things you want. And so now when I feel a sense of nervousness or fear, I'm okay with it because it means I'm alive. It means I want something. And for so many years, I try and control what I thought I can control, which was work. And I would do
yeah,
so successfully. I was an investment analyst, moved over to asset management, and it seemed like it was great on the surface. But in reality, I had no control over my personal life. So when my ability
yeah,
to even control my body, down to the simplest fact, like controlling my bladder, went, I realized I didn't really have control. It was all a facade. And I had to really go back. So hearing people like yourself who's been so intentional about creating and carving out their career based on like the type of life they want to live is just so inspirational, because for me, I didn't have that until I had nothing. I was at rock bottom and I was like, oh wait, wake up.
yeah. And I guess I was lucky in a lot of ways. I used to not control it. I used to be like, for a couple of years there in my earlier career, like I had no personality outside of work, and I was 7 days a week. And
Okay.
um, I was lucky in the sense that I nothing terrible per se happened that shifted me. But I didn't carve out time. I gave up my hobbies. I gave up going out with friends. I lost touch with people. And I became this version of a person. I was probably being a little defensive, I would say, if we loop it back. And it's interesting when you have these conversations, you start linking things up. So, if I think about that defensiveness, it was coming from a spot where, I was the youngest, only woman in the room, and I was having to fight for everything and prove my worth and prove why I was supposed to be in the room. And, I was lucky. I won some awards in my younger career, and I got on some, 30 under 30 lists, and it was great. But then, that comes with a target on your back as well. And it's that idea of, well, was there a target on my back, or did I put it on my back? And you're asking yourself all these questions. And I was lucky. I had a colleague I respect, and I'm still friendly with, who told me politely to cop on to myself, to take my power back, to ask for help, which I
Yeah.
think is probably still, I still need to work on that. looping back maybe to being the oldest of five, and it was my job to control the chaos. I think I struggle to ask for help sometimes, and we all need help. So that's something I'm actively learning on, and I definitely now look at things differently, how I work, when I work, what I take on. There's still weeks where I clock 80 hours, don't get me wrong, but they're rare. They used to be the norm. They're now rare. And I think that shift in perspective for me of, not everything's an emergency. Not everything needs to be done today. Your mailbox doesn't need to be at zero. That's fine. Get over that want to have your mailbox cleared. And, that shift in perspective really, changed how I operate. I think COVID was a big wake up call for a lot of us. It forced us into doing certain things. And yeah, I think it's important. I now look at my personal schedule and my professional schedule like with equal importance, which I used to not do. So that's been a positive shift, I would say.
I'm so glad to hear that, because people don't realize that true burnout prevention
Mm,
starts in your personal life.
yeah.
Because the greater satisfaction you have in your personal life, the less unnecessary stress you have in your personal life, the greater capacity you have to be innovative in your professional life, because you're not being bogged down and weighed down with just rubbish ultimately, and if
Mm,
you aren't enjoying your personal life, then work becomes the forefront.
yeah.
Because when
I think it's
work is
also connected as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
without a doubt, absolutely. Thanks for
Mm.
sharing that. I know you said that having that conversation with your old colleague helped, but what tangibly did you do to start creating that shift so you weren't all work, but you became Rebecca and work?
Um, what did I do? It's a good question. I think, I took, well, actually, well, like I made a plan. That's an important thing to do. I said, right, something needs to change here, and I took some time out. Well, I say take some time out. It was a weekend. I did this over, but I sat down with a pen and paper and I started writing down some of the things that had been happening that I was happy with, some that I wasn't happy with. And I'm a big believer in putting paper to pen, to kind of get things out of you and thinking about it. And it was small changes that I started to make. I'm lucky that I was able to overnight book some holidays, because I said you got to get out of Dublin for a while. So I booked 2 trips the next day, because I thought that will. I was lucky I was going to go see friends and family, and I did that. And well, I guess it's more recent, but I did at the time too. I'm back in the gym, and on a Sunday plan my gym classes and I book them in, and I try to be as strict as possible. As if a meeting goes in, then I can't go because I'm going to the gym. So, and that's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. I'm more proactive now with like planning stuff with friends and family, and even if that means a plan is like 3 months out, I always find if it's in the diary, it's more likely to happen than if we're just talking about it. So, it's not always, and I think I struggle with this too, and I talk to people a lot about it. To change your life doesn't necessarily mean you're changing everything or you're changing these big, huge things. Sometimes that comes, don't get me wrong, but it's the power of the little small things that can make a difference. Scheduling the gym class, going for a coffee with an old friend, giving your time to reading a book. That was one of my things I wanted to do more this year was read books. You might see loads behind me at the moment, but I'm more of like, I think if I buy the book, they osmosis the knowledge into me. So I'm
No.
still working on that. But so I don't think I did one thing. I just tried to embrace the power of small changes. And ultimately, like, you just have to get into the habit then, because it's the continuing of those habits that make a difference. And I was lucky that I was able to take that on. I feel like I'm in a good spot now, probably the best I've been in a while, in terms of that mix of my career is going well, it's in a good spot, I can kind of see what's coming next. I've really great people around me, good friends, good family. I have a couple of things going on in my personal life, and I'm feeling good. So long may it last.
I love that. I'm a huge believer in work-life satisfaction, because I think it's more attainable and tangible than work-life balance.
Mhm.
Because as you said, sometimes, things ebb and flow. There'll be times where maybe 80 hours is what's needed and necessary for that season, but
Mhm.
not your entire career span. So creating that sense of satisfaction in your personal life and your professional life enables you to be sustainable in whatever it is that you're working on and not sacrifice your health along the way. I think
Yeah.
what's really important in what you said as well, though, is making time for it. I
Yeah.
think people underestimate the power of their calendar. It doesn't just have to be filled with the meetings and deliverables that have to go on in your professional life, but actually you can fill your calendar with things in your personal life. So I'm very grateful for Subira in 2022 for putting in concerts and festivals for the first
Yeah.
part of 2023, because my 2023 did not look anywhere near like how I imagined it would be. But Subira 2022, who pre-planned fun events,
Yeah.
I love her. She
Yeah.
was smart. She was
I
so
think
smart.
that's so important though, because like we were all can fall into the trap of complaining and talking and, you know, thinking what we want to do. And the only difference between people doing it and those not is that they're doing it. You know, we
Absolutely
can all
that.
get there. So yeah.
Absolutely that. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Far too many people talk and focus on the problem. And I'm a huge believer that, look, use 5% of your energy to identify there's a problem, use 95% of your energy to create the solution for it. And I
Mm,
think that's what really differs between those who do and those who don't. It's easier to just focus on the
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, and
And
I get that because you know we all fall into that trap. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I always say like just like I said before, small changes. You don't need to go for the big massive life changes right out the bat. You know they can start small.
absolutely, and just showing up as the person that you would like to be. So as you said, going to those gym classes, booking them in and prioritizing them, showing up as the person that you want to be. It's funny that you talk about starting running many times, but sticking to it this time. The amount of
Yeah.
times I've started like yoga, I feel like everyone expects me to be this yogi, being the corporate hippie. I am not. The hippie part is my empathetic and kind approach to helping businesses to
Yeah.
feel their bottom line. But my sister gifted me a unlimited yoga like month pass, and I'm gonna
Oh,
do
I
my
love that.
best to commit and show up to it because it's something I do want in my life, but we just got to schedule it into the calendar. So that is something I'll
Yeah,
be doing after this episode.
I love to hear it.
Thank you very much for the inspiration, Rebecca.
Anytime, anytime.
I want to double back to women in the intellectual automation world.
Mhm.
What has it been like for you, as you mentioned before, being like the youngest in the room, the only female in the room, and what have you done to really help establish your brand, your presence in this space, in this world?
Um, yeah, maybe some of what I did is not, necessarily directly tied to, just being a woman in the room. Maybe it's universally,
Mm,
able to be used for advice. But, I always said no one cares as much about your career as you do. So that's kind of the first spot I started. And even if I think of, I now am in a position where I get to mentor women, and that's the first point we say. It's like no one cares about your career as much as you do, and no one should have to care for your career because they have their own career to worry about. And that was something I always knew when I was coming up through the ranks. And as a woman, I said, okay, I'm going to start reaching out to people and asking for help because most of the time people are very willing to extend the hand of help, but you have to be the one to reach out. So I was really lucky that, and maybe it ties back to that confidence as well, that I reached out to people, and I didn't care where you were in the world or how senior or otherwise you were. I'd be dropping those LinkedIn messages saying, hey, can we have a coffee? And I'd be picking people's brains and just asking questions and learning. And I think that was one of the first things I really did, because I realized that, okay, these people at this table, they do have maybe 20 years on me. So I'm going to have to like propel my learning pretty quickly. Okay, how am I going to do that? I'm going to, reach out to people I know, respect in the industry, and start talking to them. So I think that was important for me. The next thing, perception is reality. That's something that rings through with me, and I talk to women about, because I had to, no matter how maybe panicked I was in the background, or how scared I was, or potentially how upsetting something was, or all these things that are happening. Not that it didn't matter, but and sometimes it didn't matter because I needed that perception of what everyone saw. That
yeah,
becomes reality, and that's just, I believe, a fact. So again, how can I project this confidence, whether it be fake or otherwise? How can we, if I look at the service, how can we create a service that works and is ready to go, and we can be ready within a minute? And I think that's really important because I get so many comments all the time about, how do you do it all, Rebecca? And you're so busy, and I see you traveling, and, you're always just seem so calm. And, the gag of it is my anxiety is usually quite high, but, you smile through it. And I think that perception being reality is helped with my career a lot because, again, promotions come from perception as well, and that's why I try to tell people there's obviously the work you're doing, but it's how you're perceived by your colleagues, by the seniors. I mean, that's where promotions come from. Whether we're allowed to say that out loud or not, I don't know, but that all plays into it. And then the other thing I always talk about, and I've already mentioned, is having a plan. So, being very strict on this is where I am now, understanding your reality,
Mm.
being honest with yourself as to where you are now and seeing where you want to get to. And I think being realistic about it too. I was very lucky the time frame that I moved from grad to kind of global head, and I don't know if that's normal. Maybe it's not. But again, it's be realistic with what needs to be done. Be realistic, and sometimes you just got to put your time in. You got to do jobs that you don't necessarily want to do, but you got to do them because that's what needs doing. And um, outside of that, the corporate world is one big playing field. It's a game.
It
It's
really
a
is.
game, and if you want to be in it, you got to play it. And you got to make connections. You got to work smart. You got to be kind. Going back to that idea, I know I've already said it and maybe it's overused, but really treating people how you want to be treated. And that's something I really had to dig down and learn and really put to the forefront because, I wasn't always shown the same respect as I put out into the world. And again, taking that and leading with empathy and being like, okay, well, why would they treat me like that? And that's a
Yeah.
hard spot to have to like remind yourself to be in. And I definitely probably snapped a couple of times over the years, but I think the last thing I'll say on that is something I really had to learn and I talk to people about as well is you have to be able to forgive people when they fall short because we're all going to. It's a long old life and career if we're lucky that we have, and we don't always get it right. And I think maybe I held myself and others to this unattainable standard in my early career, which maybe led to some of that defensiveness and close to burnout. And that's
Mm.
something I was really important for me coming up through the ranks is forgive people, allow them to grow. And if I tie that back to the whole being a woman in the room, and I'm lucky, middle class, white, Irish woman, straight. I have a lot of things going in my favor, so I don't want any pity over here. It's understanding that privilege for myself, and I'm
Yeah.
figuring out what that means. Moving forward, and you got to give people room to grow and learn, and I'm a big believer in that. And if
Yeah.
someone shows you who they are, fair enough, we'll move on and you're cut. But most times people are good and the intent is good, and you got to give people that time to learn. And I kind of went around the world with that answer, but
It's all very relevant. I'm a huge believer that ignorance is just a lack of knowledge. Willful ignorance, on the other hand, I don't tolerate that
no,
because you know better, you just don't want to do better. So I think that's
yeah,
completely fine. And I think there's such power in acknowledging your privilege, but also privilege is transitory, so it doesn't invalidate any experiences that you may have or otherwise. But I think there's such strength and courage being to just own your privilege. And you're absolutely right. The corporate world is a game. And so I became the corporate hippie after having a meeting with a CIO and a chief investment officer in the city back in, it was actually Valentine's Day 2020, February 14th in the city. And he said to me, don't you find the investment industry really male, pale and stale? I said, no, I don't. And he said, really? But I'm a white man and I think it's too male, pale and stale. I said, listen, I belong in any room I decide to be in. And that was the day I became the corporate hippie. I
I love
realized that I was a
that.
round peg who got tired of fitting in to a square hole, but I was on the right board because it is a games board. And you have
Mm,
to show up and you have to play and you have to be present.
yeah.
Said perception is reality. People had never heard of a corporate burnout prevention consultant until 2020 because I made it up. However, I
I
showed
hadn't heard about it until I met you, and now I'm telling everyone about it.
it is that perception is reality thing.
Yeah.
And so even winning my award at the beginning of the year for Young Business Person of the Year, it's about perception, but you have to create that perception by doing the work, showing up and owning it. So on the topic of awards, Rebecca, I would love for you to tell us about you know which award I'm talking about. I'd love for you to tell us about the award and the story around it, because I know when I won my award, it definitely had an effect on me, not in the way that most people would think. In that when I won it, I thought, and similar to what you said earlier, that they're not so much a target on my back, but I put this self-imposed pressure on my back of how
Expectation.
I now have to show up in the world because I won this award, which was just so far from the truth. So I'd love to know your award story and how it was for you, given that you
Mhm.
are a multi-award-winning professional.
Thank you. Yeah, well, given I know the one you're talking about and the story that's attached to it, we'll start with that one. And it's really where this whole idea for me and the importance of perception versus reality came to play, because it was pretty early in my career. It was, I think, 2019. So I think I was maybe two years into my career from college, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but the award was Future IT Leader, or something like that, that I was lucky enough to win. Yeah, I guess the award itself is irrelevant to the story, but that's kind of what sparked it. And I remember when I got nominated, like, even a nomination, you have all these eyes on you and all of this attention. And we were going to this like black tie event, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's so exciting." And I was like telling all the world, I was like, "Yes, I'm so excited. It's so great for the team. And yes, so great. Like, even if I don't win, ha ha ha." Even though in my head I was like, it's nice to be nominated, but I also like to win. Let's not lie. um, and what people didn't realize was that while all this hype and excitement was happening, and I was doing interviews, and like people in work were coming up and saying congratulations, behind my smile was this absolute panic of, oh my God, what am I going to wear? I'm going to be photographed. What's it going to do? Like, what's it going to do? If I win, what do I do? If I lose, what do I do? Again, and I hate always talking about it, because I don't know if it's a female experience, but back to the idea of, will the photos look good? Do I look big? Do I don't? And I hate that we come back there as women in society, and all these things happening in my head. And then the award night came around, and I was lucky enough. We showed up. I had this red dress. I felt good. We won. It was all great. We had a great, fantastic night. I think I didn't end up coming home till about 4 a.m. that morning. Luckily, the award was still intact. But when I'm telling this story about perception versus reality, I put up a photo on LinkedIn the next day with the picture of me getting the award in this red dress, and it became this like joke within the company of like, did you see Rebecca in the red dress? And I had all these comments, and everyone was congratulating me. And if you just looked at that photo, the perception that photo was putting out was, she is so confident, she knows what's going on, and like, go her. And if I have a visual aid, I then actually show my camera roll of that day and that night. And I think there must have been like 500 photos of me taking photos in different positions and angles, and all in this red dress. Like it haunts me, this red dress. But the reason I had taken 500 pictures is because I was feeling a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I didn't know what was going to happen in the evening, and I knew there was going to be pictures, and I wanted to make sure that I knew how to pose. And the reality was, I was nervous, I was a bit scared, I was probably a little insecure of what was happening. But then the perception was, she's cool, calm, and collected. And that's a lot. The red dress story is, a lot of people know it now, and that's where, for me, that idea of perception versus reality really came to the forefront. And that keeps me, humble and honest too, I guess, as we move through that. A picture can say 1,000 words, but so can the 1,000 pictures on the camera roll.
And I absolutely love that. As I said, when I first heard that story, it resonated with me so much because I thought I was the only one. I was like, oh my gosh, because earlier that year I went to an award by myself. Like, I was grateful that I'd been nominated, grateful that I made the finals, but I went by myself. I didn't even tell my family where I was going
Oh my
that
gosh.
evening. I was just like, oh, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And I'm there in this floor-length gold ball gown that I had initially bought during retail therapy when I was suicidal. And it's just been sitting in my wardrobe since 2017. And so then to have the opportunity to wear it, and as you said, people are like, oh my gosh, what if you win? And you're like, oh no, it's just nice being in the room. But in your head, you're like, I really want to win.
You want to win, yeah.
And then I won the gold award in this gold dress, but it was a fantastic experience, but it really did have me spiraling for the first 6 months of the year, thinking that I now have to show up in a certain way, but on the surface, everyone's just seeing this, this fabulous dress and this fabulous award, but underneath the water, like my duck feet were paddling like real hard, going, what's
Yeah.
next?
I think it's so important to remember that, because I know, when I was looking for, inspiration when I was coming up through, and I'd hear these stories about, people with these careers, and they're up at 6 a.m. and they're doing yoga and it's all so good and they're moving and shaking. And I'm like, who, like, well, great if that's the life you're living, but that's not the experience I have. And so many people I talk to, that's not the experience they have. So, I try to sprinkle the actual honesty without
Yeah.
scaring people too much, of, what it takes to have a big job and a big career. It's not easy. And, we should want to win these awards, I think. And I don't know if it's just an Irish thing, but, you're supposed to say, it's just nice to be here. And it is nice to be there, but, it's also nice to win. So,
Absolutely. And I'm no longer shying away from that. I'm taking complete ownership. I want to win. Like, I really want to win. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I was speaking to my friend about a similar topic just yesterday, and she went, yeah, winners don't want to lose. And we are winners. Whether we win or not, we are winners, and no winner wants to lose. So now I don't hide it. Yeah, I want to win. I absolutely want to win. I want to show up. I want to win. I've been working hard. I've been in the work. But also, I think it's fair to say that things are transitory. So there was a period of time in my life where my morning started with a 2-hour spa session, like an hour gym session and 2-hour spa session, and then work, because that's what I needed at that time. Whereas nowadays, particularly when it's summer, I don't want to be up at 4:30 in the morning. I don't.
I never want to be up at 4:30 in the morning.
Well, I do in the winter. I honestly do in the winter, because I like to go to bed early in the winter.
Fair.
It gets dark quickly, so I'm like, oh, bedtime, early
Yeah.
start. But in the summer, I'm like, absolutely miss me with that. The gym will not be seeing me until autumn. The gym will not be 4:30 in the morning until autumn comes. And I think, as you said, it's about that level of transparency and honesty, because I no longer pride myself in how hard I work, but I pride myself in how I do the work, in terms of how I interact with people, how I meet people, and the outcome and the impact of that work. And I think we get caught up in this hustle culture, be it entrepreneur or corporate professional, in that things have to look a certain way and we have to be dog tired. And I'm like, no. Fireproof your career, achieve sustainable success without the sacrifice. And that's sacrifice in health. There'll be sacrifice, like you said, in terms of not going out as much sometimes, or, maybe you do have to do an early start or an 8-hour here and there, but you don't have to sacrifice your health and vitality, who you are, the essence of who you are, in order to achieve that.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes left, and one of the questions I really want to ask you is, for any HR professionals listening, or for any woman in particular listening who wants to get into the field of intellectual automation, how do we increase the representation of women within that world? Does it start from what you study at college? Does it start from how we advertise certain roles? What advice would you give?
Yeah, a big question. I think, realistically, if we look at, STEM subjects and what kids are learning in school, it's having them available from a young age. I think it's important that, if we start at college or even in your career, it's still important, don't get me wrong, but it's almost sometimes too late. So it's, how can we get programs in schools in place that, people know that those STEM subjects are available to them, and the power of computer science and all that fun stuff. So because that makes a difference, the subjects that you choose to study kind of in your secondary education leading you into college. I think that's really important. I do think we need to start, from early school years, as to putting those options on the table. I think if we look, at maybe more at the workplace, I think maybe particularly from a HR perspective, I think having policies in place are great, but policies in place only work and matter, in my opinion, if they're actually working for the people of your organization. So I don't like to see kind of tick box exercises of, oh, well, we have this policy in place. I'm like, great, but is it being used? Is it
Yeah.
being KPI'd? What's it actually doing for people in work? And I think it's, we should be asking our HR teams those questions, because again, policies are only good if they work. I'm a big believer in mentorship programs. I've seen the power of it for myself, and I've been lucky enough to be a mentor. I think if your organization can run a mentorship program, I've seen that be so powerful. Again, sometimes it's just going back to that confidence. And, we all have the ability to be confident, but sometimes, you just need that little push in the right direction, or, that one introduction that will get you onto a new team, or, that one bit of advice that will get you that pay rise. And, I love that I get to do that with so many women in both Expleo and further afield. So, having a mentorship program within your workplace, within your college, college space, I think is powerful. I think visibility is important. That's a big one and a small one, because it's probably all related. We need more people in the field to have more visibility, but, looking at your leadership teams, making sure they're representative of, your company, the world that we're living in is really important. So, it's a big topic. I think if there was an easy answer, we probably would have found it already. There's kind of some of the things top of mind that come to play. Education is important, starting from small, and then having policies that actually work for your people in your organizations.
I think that's really important, because I don't know if I tell people this, probably haven't, but I feel like if I was exposed to dentistry and maybe dermatology from a younger age, I probably wouldn't be an economics grad, like investment analyst background at all. I probably would have gone straight to dermatology and dentistry, particularly orthodontistry. That's not a word, but being an orthodontist, because that there's such a fascination around it, but I just didn't know it was something that existed. So as you said, it's exposure to, like you're saying, your dad worked in IT. I think if organizations really do work with local colleges and schools to really just let people know there's more than the four walls around them, that can be huge. I'm also a huge believer in people taking ownership of their career. So part of the visibility is, how do you show up on LinkedIn, for example? Curating that profile, letting people know what you are interested in, what experience you have had, what awards you may have won, to really help to build and amplify your own brand and space in that world. It's so important.
Be your own biggest cheerleader. That's what I say sometimes. It's nice when you have others, but you got to be your own one first.
I'm definitely learning that. I get in trouble and told off so many times by my siblings for not actually self-promoting or telling people what I've got going on. As I said, I went to the award, didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, that's
And then
crazy.
came home, was like, "Hi, by the way, I'm the Young Business Person of the Year. I think
I have too big of a mouth to keep any secrets. As much as I'd like to be mysterious.
The thing is, though, I can promote everyone else apart from, like, it comes to myself. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did that. I guess I've got that coming up," whatever. But Rebecca, we're coming towards the end, and we spoke about this word earlier, and I think it's a really beautiful place to end on, because I believe in work-life satisfaction, and a great way to acknowledge that level of satisfaction is gratitude, because if you're grateful about something, it can change how you experience something, and if you can change how you can experience something, by definition, you've changed your reality, which I think is the most incredible way to take back your personal power in any situation. So please, Rebecca, tell me one thing in your personal life and one thing in your professional life that you are incredibly grateful for today.
Oh, I don't know if I have just one.
Give us a couple. Give us a couple.
No, I'm grateful for so many things. I have a beautiful, albeit sometimes chaotic, life. And I guess if I start with my personal, my family, I've mentioned them throughout our discussion. My mom, my dad, my siblings, they're the best part of me. My friends, I don't have many, but the ones that I do, I would go to battle for every single day. And, I think they know me better than I know myself sometimes. And they challenge me, they protect me. We have so much fun. And, when I look at my friends and family, they're amazing and inspiring and loyal. And, I'm really lucky to be doing life with them. And, they're a constant source of gratitude that I have. If I look at my professional life, my company, I think it'd be remiss of me not to mention Expleo and the investment that they've put into me and the team. And, I always get to learn from them. My colleagues, while I don't always agree with them, I do always learn. And my team, they're some of the most talented bunch of people that I have, the privilege of being around. And if you don't have us in the room when you're launching your intelligent automation program or deploying it, that's your loss. Confidence, arrogance, I don't know what that's called. It's up to you. But, and I'm grateful for the ability to do things like this and to meet people like you and help where I can. So, I'm lucky that I have so much to be grateful for, and I try to pass it forward whenever I can.
I love that. And in your words, long may it continue.
Long may it continue.
Rebecca, thank you ever so much. For anyone who would like to learn more about your work, follow your career, and potentially reach out to you for questions around intellectual automation, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Rebecca Keenan is the best spot to see me and keep up.
Incredible. And I definitely recommend you reach out to and follow Rebecca's LinkedIn profile to see everything that she's doing. She is a trailblazer. What's that? The future IT star. Is that what? That's basically what I'm going to paraphrase the award.
Something like that. Something like that.
Okay, something, And also, can I just clarify that your career progression is not normal, it's exceptional.
Oh, thank
I heard
you.
you say it earlier. I just want to rectify that real quick. It's exceptional.
Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.